Okay, good. Found it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Product Council. Our originally scheduled session had to be cancelled at short notice because the workstream wasn't quite ready. But that's fine. I'm very grateful to Sam for stepping in and agreeing to talk to us about core and releases workstream. And actually, I think it's very, very timely. It's been some time since we had an update on core and releases, and there's been some interesting developments in that area. So I think it's very timely. So on that note, I'd like to get Sam to step in, and perhaps you could take it away and bring us up to date on what you've been doing.
Sure, Paul. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is not a formal session, but I'll walk through where we are and outline some ongoing activities on the Mojaloop core and releases side. Usually, as you may expect, there will be overlap with other work streams as well, especially the ones that are active and having work like platform quality and security, Interscheme, on-prem, participation tools, those kind of things. But at any point of time, if you have any question or if you want me to discuss anything in more detail, please feel free to interrupt and let me know, because we don't have too many people here. So I think that's doable. Right. With that said, let me start sharing a couple of slides that I put together, and I will continue. Paul, can you please confirm when you can see the slideshow?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. So before we go into too much detail on the activities, I wanted to give a snapshot of where we are. Mojaloop Congo V16 is the latest Mojaloop stable release. This was done in the previous PIs, the previous PI at the early weeks of the previous PI. And it's been stable so far. We have a QA environment that runs it continuously. Recently, we updated the version on our QA environment, but we have a cron job that runs. It's been running for more than a few weeks with no major issues, no issues. And we're confident that this is working well. This has been foundation for work done by other work streams as well. So this is looking good. So Helm V16, there are a couple of patches to this version. 16.01 was made recently, but these are not very significant. And only yesterday or in the last week, we also made another patch release as well. But the big picture, Mojaloop Congo V16 is the latest release. And initially, the Mojaloop IAC release version was V5. And there have been a lot of enhancements for that. The Infotech team, who's been doing a lot of work on IAC, has made many changes. We had the latest release that we use to set up sandboxes is version 5.3.8. There is a 5.3.9 as well, 5.3.2, and many releases there, especially in development and testing. But 5.3.8 is the one that we are using currently for deploying sandboxes for our Mojaloop Foundation internal purposes. But even for this, the release used internally, the core of Mojaloop is version 16. And in the core, the latest, the usual use cases supported are P2P, request to pay, bulk, PSP come out of the box. We also have the settlement models, deferred net and continuous gross, and of course on the admin side, part spent lifecycle management as well. In the release notes, we can see the various versions of API supported. And on the bundled Mojaloop release with IAC, we get the other components that are part of the Mojaloop platform as well, that are required for security, onboarding, PKI best practices, implementing PKI and things like that, gateway and load balances, the gateway Istio, ORI stack, and the tooling to support mutual TLS, JWS, finance portal that comes with IAC as well. It has its own charts repo and reporting as well. Apart from that, we also have the monitoring options that come with IAC. So this is where we are, even though there are a lot of things that are in flux and that are in progress. It is promising, and we are envisioning a huge release V17 by the end of this PI before the community event. Work is underway for that. I'll talk about some ongoing activities there. And then coming back to the workstream objectives, as you know, the major objective is to ensure that the current latest stable release of Mojaloop and IAC work as expected, especially for adopters who want to take it downstream and add their own components on top of that. If there are any issues supporting that, troubleshooting, that's one of the bigger goals. And then making subsequent releases of Mojaloop as well. The work for releasing the next feature release, V17, which comes with FX and interscheme and proxy related features developed by the I think we have work from 3 work streams that is going to come up with that release as well. And this is being tested currently, and you can follow these updates from those work streams in the work stream meetings and updates there. Along with that, there are some minor upgrades and security patches that are usually a part of the general maintenance. Anticipated progress, I'm optimistic that we'll make both releases, but definitely a V17 because this is also tied to other constraints around implementer requirements. Like as you know, we have an adopter who's taking Mojaloop and has some timelines around that. So it's very promising. It is looking promising that we'll have a release of this PI. The testing for that is looking good. We have some final issues, but nothing that cannot be overcome. Ongoing activities. So we have a couple of dev environments. We have what we call one QA environment. These are all Mojaloop internal environments. So we have a sandbox that we use for testing internally, which is deployed with IAC. But there are also other environments which are not IAC based. Just we have a cluster and we use a Helm install to deploy Mojaloop core charts. And we may be able to deploy finance portal on that, but this is focused on the Mojaloop core services, like the changes that happen to, let's say, services like the Mojaloop central ledger, the MLAP adapter, which are the key pieces of our ledger handling, position movements, clearing, settlement, and account lookup, coding, those kind of things. So most of the work that's done as part of implementing FX and interscheme went in there. There are, of course, there's accompanying changes that will happen in the peripheral components as well. But these dev and QA environments we use for testing the features when they're first implemented. And the workstream is now using the interscheme, and proxy workstream is now using one of our dev environments to test that feature. So 2 environments we have dedicated for testing at the moment. And then there is another dev environment we are testing the new patch release. So there was a patch release that I talked about, V1604. We recently had to make a patch release because Mojaloop by default comes with a default config. Let's say we make a Mojaloop release now, V16. We encourage adopters to take it, especially anything above dev and QA, like staging, pre-prod production. It has to have custom configuration. But to give a reference, we have an example backend chart. So this example backend deploys third-party open source components like Kafka, MySQL, Redis, MongoDB, and other dependencies that our services use. And there was a configuration change needed on Kafka, and our default deployment was failing because so if someone wants to just deploy default module without making any changes, one of the services, the Kafka service, recently made a change where several configuration options have to be listed mandatorily in the config option. Earlier, they were not listed. So what was happening was at the time of Mojaloop V16 release, that was not necessary. So the default deployment was passing fine. There were no issues. But recently, Kafka made a change to include some mandatory parameters, and that was breaking the example backend chart. Again, this is a reference that we provided. We rely on infrastructure teams to develop to deploy their own backends properly configured. But the reference was failing, so we updated the config and patch list. It doesn't introduce any new features as such. It's just some default configuration that was required that lists out the protocols that have to for security, those kind of things. So that is being tested, and one of the activities or one of the goals recently have been that in all of our environments, whether it is core test harness, starting from the lowest environment like core test harness and going to higher environments, even Helm install, for example, we wanted to have finance portal as part of that. In the past, finance portal has its own charts repository. There is a repository called charts where finance portal charts are located, and then actual Helm charts for the rest of the Mojaloop core services are present in a repository called Helm. Because of this separation, unfortunately, there were some implementers, like some initial like developers who are in the initial stages of looking at Mojaloop. They only deployed Mojaloop Helm without the finance portal. So we're trying to reduce that gap and have both of them tied together so that the finance portal can be deployed as well, starting from even core test harness to Helm install. So as part of that, trying out a few deployment scenarios on our one of the QA environments as well. And then testing of current release candidate for V16.10. I've discussed this at the community event as well, but we haven't made the release as such. There were a couple of blocking issues, a lot of technical debt that we addressed, but one or two items still left there. So that is ongoing as well in one of our environments. We call them Moja 1, Moja 2, Moja 3, Moja 4. This is internal name that we use in the work streams. But essentially the outline there is that we have several dev environments for testing these variations and deployment scenarios. And then we recently uncovered that some in some of our sandboxes, several like certain features that we like to do from the UI are not working as expected. So we are using a sandbox environment to look into that, and hopefully we'll address that soon as well. I talked about the patch release of Mojaloop and finance portal deployment. And yeah, the other goal is when other if there are adopters who have particular or specific requirements around deployment scenarios or deployment environments, other than the ones that we recommend or that we try out on a regular basis, we want to still support those requests from the community members as well. And we've done that for a couple of teams during this PI. And that's one of the things we take up as part of this PI, as part of this work stream as well. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a mid PI, but I think it's September 24th, but with a week left, yeah, I kind of said that this is a mid PI. V16.10 is out there, the release candidate for development purposes, like development and testing purposes. But the roadmap is what I want to focus on for this PI. The next release, V17 release candidate. Again, this comes from the work stream. This is not a timeline that I'm giving or I'm providing as part of this work stream, but based on my discussions with the work stream members there, we are positive that this will come in and will be delivered before the end of this PI. So the features listed there will include the FX feature and interscheme and proxy workstream. So these designs have been extensively discussed in the design authority, and the designs have been approved, and we know that the work stream is continuing with the implementation there. And we also heard some of the updates on previous product council meetings as well. Along with those, we have some additional performance enhancements as well. V16 was the big performance enhancement release, but we have more coming after that as well, and that will go into this release candidate, along with some updates from platform quality and security. So that is the big update there in the roadmap. We have a V17 coming with those, and then we'll continue community support and supporting scenarios and other work streams who have deliverables as well. A snapshot, Congo existing stable release. V16 is what we call it, but there's a minor patch release, and these patches happen. V16.04 is what we had the last week. Yeah, and actually I'm trying out a deployment in the background to deploy finance portal on top of Helm charts deployment as well. So that's a stable release. It's working fine. And 16.10, thinking somewhere midway between now and the end of the PI, we'll have a Zambezi with the features listed there: general performance enhancements, maintenance and updates, and also merchant payment features. We have a development release available if anyone wants to test it and demonstrate, but the official version is still not out there. That we have only the release candidate. And then we also have I think Paul Macon already provided name for this V17. I think we're calling it Irrawaddy, and that's what we have in the pipeline in the coming weeks. That will include FX and inter-scheme proxy workstream. The rest of the items listed here, we don't see that they'll be ready by the time we are going to publish this release, but they'll happen when the workstreams, the respective workstreams deliver those features. The settlements improvements on V now, we haven't seen that completed. It's been done for VNext. On the PSP bulk API support, we have the API support, but the implementation has not been done there. And the others are something we don't have actively part of any workstream at the moment. So that's all I have prepared for this session. There is a slide I included here as well. I'm not going to go over this now, but just a release cycle that we have, and we're going to improve our documentation around this as well. Paul, any questions?
Yeah, I had a few things that I wanted to say. I think possibly not for this audience, but it's quite common for people in the Mojaloop community who are less familiar to understand the difference between a core release and the IAC release, and therefore assume that everything that they have in a core release is the whole it, if you like, the whole piece. Do you have any thoughts on how we can improve messaging around this? So, you have to download, you have to install and deploy Mojaloop, but you also need all these other things if you want to get to, if you want Finance Portal or any of the other items.
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. Can I share this community central post as we talk through that, Paul?
Yeah.
This is definitely an issue we need to address. And for the last release for Congo, we did make this community central post and try to talk about like what IAC v5 means and what Mojaloop Congo means and what is coming with it. So talked about there's a Mojaloop release and then IAC specifically. But if there are other ways where we could get better at messaging and reduce that gap, I think that'll be good as well.
Yeah, I think if anyone else has any ideas on how we can improve that messaging, and actually, if there's anyone in this call who's actually had this issue, that they're not totally aware of this requirement, I'd be interested to hear from you. Separately, I thought you should also, Sam, say something about the success you just had in deploying on-prem with Basis. I think you should talk about that because I think that's really important.
Sure, Paul. Yeah. So recently we supported one of the workstreams as part of the merchant workstream. The merchant workstream wanted to demonstrate the aspects of merchant payments that they developed in the previous PI. And to demonstrate that, they wanted to have a Mojaloop deployment on-prem. Usually, the first option we suggest is the cloud because we are well versed with that. We have environments on AWS running, but the team wanted to have it deployed on-prem. So we suggested doing because the control center V2 is still in development and we have an AWS dependency there. We suggested let's try a Helm install of Mojaloop and then deploy other components on that as needed, like charts. But I think for this demonstration purpose, the team at Basis wanted to deploy Mojaloop, and on top of that, the merchant portal and other services that they developed as part of merchant workstream and showcase that demo. So we didn't need like any complex setup, and it did not involve onboarding FSPs from outside. So that worked. In fact, one of the patch releases we made recently, the latest one, V16.04, came out of that because while deploying and troubleshooting some issues with the deployment. Initially, there was an issue with one of the images, the MySQL image was not getting deployed. We understood that it was using an Intel processor, and our images, especially in Bitnami, the charts that we use deploy those for AMD 64. And then the next issue we encountered was in Kafka. So the Kafka deployment, the pod was failing. It was actually initially deploying fine, but when we deploy Mojaloop core services on top of that, as part of establishing integration, the SASL handshake was failing. And the reason for that was Kafka introducing some changes recently where some of the parameters, configuration options need to be listed, and it was made mandatory. So the patch release in the default example backend Helm chart, we updated that and made a patch release as part of that. So eventually, I mean, once we made that change, the deployment succeeded, and the team now is proceeding with deploying merchant services and preparing for the demonstration. So they did this on their on-prem hardware, and Mojaloop, if we take out those issues which are not specific to on-prem as such, I think the deployment went fine. I'm actually slightly pleasantly surprised to see how straightforward it was if we remove those two issues that I just discussed.
Yes, I think that, well, Nathan and yourself, you're to be congratulated. So well done on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. And we identified two areas where we could improve the documentation. One was around, I mean, we did have it already, but there was a small instruction there around ingress. So that typically the TTK UI access, unless there is a DNS configuration provided, the cluster is like the DNS are only accessible inside cluster. Wanted to add like one or two steps on how to make the TTK UI accessible to, let's say, dev machines outside of the cluster so that they can run the test collections more easily. But otherwise, our documentation seems to be aging well. But we will add that couple of instructions.
Yes, and one other aspect of that was that the Paces team were working along with Nathan and yourself to do that, and they have undertaken to document the process from the perspective of an end user, as it were, and contribute that documentation back to the community. And I think that's potentially a very positive step as well, so that other people can pick up from their lessons. So I think overall I'm very pleased with the progress on that. So thank you to Nathan, yourself, and to the Paces team. I don't think there's anyone on before.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the Paces team and Nathan. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one statement. And the after coming out of that, we want to try out a few scenarios as well that will deploy finance portal on top of that as well. And we are testing it out if the default charts just deploy fine on a Helm install and it works. That will help reduce, and we'll update the documentation to add those steps as well. And it actually prompted another discussion on the Mojaloop DA channel. If you're interested, Vijay posted a message there. Feel free to give your input there. You want to have even lower, I mean, even a more simplified version of Mojaloop with all the components involved, Kubernetes, Mojaloop core Helm charts, and finance portal. We don't know if it's feasible yet. It's in early discussions, but I'm glad to see it prompting other discussions to come up as well. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, yes, and I definitely encourage people to go to the Design Authority channel to look at the discussion around that, initiated by Vijay. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Sam. Does anyone have any questions for Sam? No? Okay, fine. I'll distribute the recording later for anyone to review. But before we go, there's a couple more things I wanted to mention, general product council business, if you don't mind. So first of all, if I just share my screen. Let me share that screen. Okay, go on. And if I just move this up there. Oh, for goodness sake. Come on, here. There. Right. Can everyone see that screen? Can somebody confirm you
Yes.
can actually see
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
So it's the Product Council meeting schedule. I just wanted to highlight, well, apart from the fact that we've had to cancel a few calls because of other demands on our time or dentist appointment or whatever it might be. We're at this point here. Sam has given the presentation today, so thank you to Sam. Next week is the mid-PI review, and Workstream leads will be asked to give an update as per usual. So to encourage as many as possible of you to attend that. I'll mention this on the Workstream leads channel as well. I doubt it'll be 3 hours. It'll probably be more like an hour and a half, 2 hours. So look forward to as many of you as possible attending that. The one after that will be merchant payments. Now, the reason why we had to slip the merchant payments readout was because we were trying to get this deployment going on-prem. We expected it to take a few days. In actual fact, by the time we got all the wrinkles out, it took 2 weeks. And then Kareem went off on his travels and was unable to actually attend. And so we've agreed with Kareem that he will present the merchant payments workstream results, and it will be the outputs will be integrated with the Mojaloop deployment that they now have, and they'll be demonstrating live merchant payments that day. So personally, I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope we'll be able to refine that demonstration and show it to the wider community at the convening, probably through a recording or something. Anyway, the one after that is ISO 222. There's been a lot of activity in that recently, and Julie, as workstream lead, will be talking through that with support of James, talking about his work with IPSL, and Michael talking about the messaging standards, etc. And then Paul Baker, scheduled you to talk about FX. I hope that's okay. And then in the far future, as in 20th of October, 22nd of October, we need to talk about next gen settlement for VNow. I don't have anyone to talk about that, but that's not to say it's not a vital subject. I want to raise that issue in advance of the convening because we really need that sorted out. So we'll come back to that later. But as I say, that's more than a month away, which is over the horizon. Next thing I wanted to talk about was workstream status. Those of you who've been paying attention will have seen that all those work streams that weren't actually making any progress have now been culled. Then they are no longer represented on the workstream dashboard at all. Oh, I've left one in, FX for V next. Sorry, I apologize, I'll call that later. But all the others have gone. The only one that I am in doubt of here is, as I say, next gen settlement for VNow. Workstream leads, I'd ask you to have a look along the records for each of your work streams and check whether what's presented here represents the current state of progress for your work stream. And if you want me to update it, then please let me know. Last thing before I let you go, I've updated the roadmap to represent that situation. So I've taken out all of the stalled work streams, and we're just left with the truly active work streams here. The ones that I've knocked off, I've added to the list here of candidate work streams for future adoption. Hopefully we'll get to some of those as they become important to adopters in the coming months, not weeks, months. So yeah, and that's all I wanted to say. Does anyone have any comment on that? Yep. Okay, fine. Thank you, Simeon, for putting the link in the chat, and thanks, Paul. Yeah. Good. I think that's everything then, unless anyone else wants to make any comment. No? Okay, good. In which case, thank you. Thank you for joining today. I'll share the recording on the Product Council Slack channel, and I'll put it in the repo as well, and you'll be able to access it from there. So thank you, everyone, and see you next week for the mid-PI review.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.